week, Josh took us through the first half of Matthew 9. And the theme was the authority of Jesus. And the way it began, as you may remember, is that Jesus forgave a paralytic his sins. And then he said, now, just so that you know, the Son of Man has authority to forgive sins, he turned to him and physically healed him. And the Pharisees were offended and taken back. And then he said, I have come not for the righteous, I have come for the sinners. And then he called Matthew, the writer of this gospel, who was a tax collector. And they went to his house, and he had a party with Matthew's friends. And again, the Pharisees, the religious, were offended. And then Jesus says, I am come to initiate the new covenant and to offer new wine in new wineskins. Now this week, we're in the second half of this chapter, and it's important to know what happened in the first half, because in the second half, what we're going to see is we're going to see illustrations of how to respond to Jesus' offer of the new covenant. And so now what I want us to do is I want us to hear the new covenant described to us in Jeremiah 31 through 34. And then we'll look at the 4 illustrations that we have on how to respond to the new covenant. So listen to Charlie Greenberg read Jeremiah 31 through 34.
The days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the people of Israel and with the people of Judah. It will not be like the covenant I made with their ancestors when I took them by the hand to lead them out of Egypt, because they broke my covenant, though I was a husband to them, declares the Lord. This is the covenant I will make with the people of Israel after that time, declares the Lord. I will put my law in their minds and write it upon their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. No longer will they teach their neighbor or say to one another, know the Lord, because they will all know me, from the least of them to the greatest, declares the Lord. For I will forgive their wickedness and will remember their sins no more.
Now, 2 Sundays ago in the New York Times Sunday Fun section, there was this remarkable article about the First Baptist Church of Orlando, Florida. And they were interviewing various people in the church, recognizing the change among evangelicals towards immigration. And as I read this article, I came upon a familiar name, a friend I've known for 30 years, a few more than 30 years, actually. And this is the interview they had with him put in the paper. Stuart Hall, 70, a member of the First Baptist Orlando for more than 3 decades, said his view concerning immigrants had changed gradually as he moved to sit in the pews near the rear of the church where immigrants new to the congregation chose to pray. It occurred to me that if Jesus was sitting next to me, he wouldn't care whether they were illegal or legal. Take me back 10 years ago, and I had this real hard outward shell about this, Mr. Hall said. Line them up and shoot them. And by that I really meant pack them up and send them home. But he said, my walk with Jesus has softened my view. Now, I just thought it was remarkable that I was reading the New York Times on a Sunday morning, and I see a familiar friend confessing that he has been moved by the new covenant of Jesus Christ and has been changed by it. And he says so here in the paper, that he is a sinner and that Jesus is changing him, and it's been gradual. So, now what we have in Matthew is Matthew gives us this account, these stories, these 4 different experiences with people. The first 2 are the primary ones we'll look at really here. But there are 4 reactions to the new covenant and how to respond to it. And you'll find these are familiar stories. I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, are very familiar with these stories. They're found in all 3 of the synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And in Matthew, the one we're looking at here, the account is given of the first 2 in 8 verses. Matthew is being very specific about the story because he's making a point, while Mark and Luke give a great deal of background and a lot of specifics about the people. Again, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So, all right, there's
It's a bad
just a
connection.
demon in the wire. Come, ow! So, 4 stories. What?
Try another mic. Jump up and down 1 or 2 times.
Do some push-ups.
All right, now can you hear me? Really? I'm not good?
Well, the sound is better.
Are you sure? All
Yeah.
right, well,
Quality is bad.
okay.
It's fuzzy.
Isn't it?
But the point I'm trying to make, I can raise my voice to tell you, is the fact that in Matthew really wants us, the reader, to grasp what it takes to be a recipient of the new covenant. And so he's not going to get distracted about details about these people. So listen as I read this. Matthew 9, 18 and 19. While he was saying this, a synagogue leader came and knelt before him and said, "My daughter has just died. But come and put your hand on her, and she will live." And Jesus got up and went with him, and so did his disciples. Active faith in the touch of Jesus brings new life, is what Matthew wants us to see. Active faith in the touch of Jesus brings new life. Next 2 verses on the second person. Just then, a woman who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak. And she said to herself, "If only I touch his cloak, I will be healed." Matthew wants us to know active faith in the touch of Jesus brings life. And then what Matthew does is he sees the healing in a single sentence. Matthew 9:22. Jesus turned and saw her. "Take heart, daughter," he said, "your faith has healed you." And the woman was healed at that moment. Active faith in the touch of Jesus brings new life. Now, it's interesting to go back and look at the parallels in Mark and Luke, and to know the expanded story about this woman. Because Matthew does refer to the fact that she was troubled for 12 years with hemorrhaging and the loss of blood for 12 years. And that Luke, the doctor, says and reports that she went to many doctors and spent all the money she had, and there was no one that could help her. So then she came to herself and said, I will go to Jesus and touch the hem of his garment. And most of us know that this was because she knew she was unclean. Ceremonially, she was unclean. She shouldn't belong. She shouldn't go to the temple. She shouldn't be among people. She shouldn't touch them or have them touch her. For she was unclean and they would be unclean. So she conceives in her mind that she can go to Jesus and touch just the edge of his garment, and that Jesus could heal her without offending anyone. And so, as the story goes, she does this while he's on the way to the house of the Pharisees, the synagogue officials. And there's a great crowd, and she does get to the edge of the garment, touches her, and Jesus then asks, someone touched me. And remember, the disciples say, well, everybody's touching everybody here. What do you mean someone touched you? And he says, someone touched me, and I sense power going out of me. And then the woman realizes she can't really escape. And she comes to Jesus, falls at his knees, tells the story in full. And then Jesus responds as with Matthew, here in Matthew. And he says, take heart, daughter. As the picture portrays, this is the first time the woman and Jesus, their eyes meet. All this woman wanted was a healing. And she conceived that all she needed to do was touch the very edge of the garment and run away. And Jesus wants to look at this woman, wants to hear her story, and wants to affirm her as a daughter of God, a daughter in the family of God. And through that, looking at one another, he wanted to offer her life. Not just healing, a whole new life. And that's what I see in the picture here. That's what she's grasping as she looks at the face of Jesus, the Lord. And Matthew goes on in his very brief description of what's going on as he's trying to instruct us, his readers, as to how to respond to the new covenant. When Jesus entered this synagogue leader's house and saw the noisy crowd and the people playing pipes, he said, "Go away. The girl's not dead, but asleep." But they laughed at him. And after the crowd had been put outside, he went in and took the girl by the hand, and she got up. News of this spread through the whole region. Active faith in the touch of Jesus brings new life. When have you been that person? When have you been the one who is active in your faith? Active enough to go to Jesus and ask him, either touch the edge of his garment, or ask him to come heal someone very important in your life. You know, this is the essence of the new covenant. That we are taken into the family of God and changed. And it is not our work, it's his. And he transforms us as clearly as if we were in the condition of having a life-threatening disease, or we had a dead daughter. And can we all tell our story? You know, I have to admit, when was the last time you went to Jesus and asked him to intervene on your behalf because you needed him? Well, it was this morning. To have and overcome the anxiety of getting up in front of you all. Now, you know, after so many years, you would think I would get over this. In fact, I have gotten over it. This just happened to really catch me. And in the preparation of this, I've had 2 or 3 times where I have literally had to go to prayer and ask the Lord to deliver me from anxiety that I really didn't understand how it had come upon me. But maybe it's in getting old. No. Maybe it's in having something very familiar to you and then you come back. I don't know what it was. But I know that Jesus has intervened, and here I am. Now, how about you? What do you need Jesus to heal in you? What would cause you to want to get up and to go find Jesus and ask him to heal you? What do you need to ask Jesus to heal? Boy, the world needs to be healed. There's 7 billion people. We got a long list, you think. You know, you could go by continents, by nations, if you want to, or tribes, or families, brothers, sisters, grandchildren. You know, the nature of the new covenant, and when we are willing, by faith, to enter into Jesus for ourselves or for someone else, there is the consequences of the amazing touch of Jesus. And that's what this chapter wishes to portray. And you can see it. It can resolve a problem that is stealing life day by day. It can awaken one from the sleep of death. You know, Jesus says she's sleeping, and they laughed at him. Well, you know, to understand his understanding of sleeping, you have to go to John 11 with Come on, guys. John 11, and we're talking about, you're going to help me out. This is the old man. Lazarus is sleeping, says Jesus to his disciples when he says, we're going to go down to Judah. And they say, we don't need to go to Judah. You want to get down? You want to get killed? You don't want to go down there now. And he says, no, he's not sleeping. He's dead. But I'm glad I wasn't there for the sake of your faith. Sleeping for Jesus is a description of death when death is not final. When death is temporary. And we have all kinds of experiences in parts of our life where we seem to be the sleeping dead. And Jesus is the Prince who is ready to come and kiss us and enliven us to new life. In whatever situation that seems to be dead. So it can awaken one to the sleep of death. It can bring sight to the blind. And it can rescue one from evil. So, in view of these two questions, what do you need Jesus to heal in you? And what do you need to ask Jesus? Who do you need to ask